every couple of months I'll hear a new twist in the slander campaign, which is fine. I find them extremely entertaining, especially when they are consisting of the word submit. I have friends that play double agent, so they're in my circle and then they're in the former circles of which I used to swim. And they'll just come back and tell me like, hey, you want to hear the latest one? We'll deconstruct it together. Like, what's at the heart of these comments being made about me, a woman, who challenged power, money, and authority in New York City churches, and then becomes the issue in their eyes. And the slander campaign is really geared at how do we discredit her? How do we unravel, in front of others, her character? And usually all they have to say is just 3 little words. She didn't submit. And it works on people. And I'm trying to figure out why. Why is this the focus? Well, it's part of the blame shifting culture. It's part of the gaslight. And notice how vague it is. What does that mean? Submit. And it's very loaded. It's very mysterious. It's very vague. Submit to what? And to whom? There's no question. Is there any ground someone wouldn't submit or maybe shouldn't submit, or by law shouldn't be expected to submit? I mean, these are the questions that I have when I hear about troubling women who are really bugging pastors because they just won't submit. I mean, this is where my mind goes. For me, I was in the PCA church for about a decade, and for a nice chunk of those years, they didn't have any problems with me, so I guess I was a good submitter then. What was the moment I all of a sudden became not a submitter? It was when pastors were asking me to accommodate abuse and they weren't doing anything to help me. And I said, no, I can't work with that. And then it turned into, she won't submit. I think the real issue is when we hire cowardice, weak, passive leaders, of which we usually like to do, to come up and enable and support the head honcho pastor, who's usually either a narcissist himself or his wife is a narcissist. We surround ourselves with these complying, passive spirits who are supposed to be safeguarding all the church holds dear, which are the people. When women don't do what they say because they might have a self-esteem or standards or want to follow New York state laws, when they won't submit, we blame shift them and say they're not submitting. I think the reason that a lot of pastors use the she won't submit is because their inability to actually do their end of the role, which is be a protector and stand up for what's right. They're the ones who are supposed to be putting their neck on the line. But when we hire these enablers, these passive men and women, but mostly men, to protect the church, when a woman comes and says, hey, I need you to help me on this, I got a predator on my case here and I'm being bullied. And when we come to them with the complaint, there's a glaring spotlight and their lack of ability to do their role for us, the congregants. That becomes the main issue. And then when you observe that and you point that out, like, hey, I've been faithfully following you, tithing money, volunteering for free, following you for years here, and now your end of the deal is showing up. I need some help here being safe in this congregation because we have a predator in our midst. When a woman does that and stands up for her end of the bargain, I'm just speaking into the general theologies behind these patterns of thinking. I'm not necessarily supporting blind blanket submission and following of leaders. That's not my interpretation of the scripture. But when women call that out, it puts a glaring spotlight on the enablers, and they're embarrassed and they're angry because you're pointing out a deep inefficiency and lack of aptitude for the role they're in, and they're afraid they're caught. And like a true narcissist enabler, and like a true flying monkey, and like a very toxic person, the focus becomes the woman. She won't submit. So when you hear slander campaigns about women who are just not submitting, really ask, like, submit to what? Was it legal? Was it one of those handsy pastors who's the center of a hashtag Me Too story? Or what about the time I called out the church for overt financial abuse? Blew that whistle and warned all these pastors about impending doom on our church that got shut down, and I warned them, and they told me that I needed to submit. It was not my role to worry about, I'm going to make another video on this, by the way, but it was not my role to worry about such things because I'm a woman and I needed to submit. And you know what? I submitted all up until the point where I lost my job because the financial abuse blew all the money. I couldn't save my own job. So yeah, I think the word submit. Yeah, I don't submit to abuse. I don't submit to false teachings and doctrine, and I don't submit to false behaviors that come right after a true teaching, but then they don't live it out. So I don't follow hypocrisy. I don't think anyone should, male or female. Why are you asking me to, on a regular basis, submit myself to ongoing mistreatment? That's abuse. That's the definition. It's very simple. Ongoing mistreatment is abuse.